Great to see everyone, and thank you so much to the principal and to the college, particularly Sindhula, for inviting me to give this keynote. And also, it's great to see so many of students, faculty, as well as friends. This talk is primarily looking at the idea of fusion, and I think this resonates quite well with the conference theme on fusion, cultural and intellectual exchanges. And I will look primarily at this idea of ecologies of creation, drawing on my work with Rewben Mashangva. And I call him the sonic guru primarily because of the way he fuses traditional folk tunes with Western music. Before I begin, I would like to show a short clip that kind of encapsulates some of the themes that I think that we are exploring, but also I think illustrates quite clearly the kind of ideas that I'll be exploring in this talk. So, if I can get the tech right. The person that I'll be talking a little bit about, Rewben Mashangva, and I think, like many of you are aware of his music. He's from Manipur, of course, and here I think that clip was actually quite characteristic of his personality. The way he plays the slide guitar, the way he sings, and the way he also combines folk tunes in his playing. And part of my argument is that he represents what I call fusion. So this presentation examines the terrain of fusion through what I call the ecologies of creation. To illustrate this point, I draw on the work of Guru Mashangva, like musician and like reviver of tradition from a crew in, say, Manipur. His music gives us a glimpse into the workings of fusion. That is about creating a practical way in which the sonic experience of singing and listening connect to what Charles Erskine called developing the body as an auditory instrument. What then do I mean by the ecologies of creation? So the ecologies of creation is about making as an open inquiry that is about engagement, related to place and rooted in the land. A central idea is that it leads to growth and establishes a new way of doing and thinking. So this notion of making and being open to inquiry is thus central to this idea of fusion. Drawing on music, fusion often contests and struggles the uneven terrain in which it sits. So is it jazz rock, or is it jazz funk, or is it jazz soul? So it is not simply a combination of different genres, but it has the ability to transform and establish its own idiom. Fusion thus represents the plurality and hybridity of the phenomenon in its ability to exceed the hyphenated form. Inherent in fusion is the ability to bring diverse forces together. And this process can be also viewed as bricolage. The French philosopher and anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss argues that bricoleurs, and I quote, combine their imagination with whatever knowledge tools they have at hand in their repertoire, and with whatever artifacts are available in their given context, to meet diverse knowledge production tasks. So I will illustrate how Guru Mashangva utilizes the tools and knowledge that he has cultivated and now possesses through his relationship to the land and the resources such as musical tones, words, and instruments he has learned to deploy in his music. He also innovates and brings together different musical forms to create a unique experience of sound that undergirds his guruship. From early influences of people like Bob Marley and Bob Dylan to the lasting impression of blues into his music landscape, fusion is constitutive of many worlds, both human as well as non-human, which enables Guru to be open to resonant encounters, and in the process fashion a distinct musical and cultural journey. And this ability to innovate and draw on different knowledge systems is not uncommon in many South Asian traditions, and amongst, for example, many musicians, cultural innovators, gurus, and so on, where the ability to skillfully utilize one's agency and knowledge in a globalized world is one of the characteristics of adapting with the times, and indeed their survival. For Mashangva, adapting with the times is precisely what is inherent in his understanding of guruship. And this is how Guru Mashangva explained his guru status to me. And I quote, "We have lost our culture and tradition, and now it has become dark. So to bring light, a teacher is needed to light a candle, a lamp. Even if it's a small light, a thin light, the dark room can now see a little better." And Guru, in his own words, means someone who is attempting to bring light to a world that has forgotten its roots. Thinking about the sonic guru as a technology of sound and the way it engages with the body is helpfully explored by Stephen Feld in this notion of epistemology, which he explains as a sonic epistemology of emplacement. This emplacement happens significantly through orality. Oral traditions play a vital role in how folk songs are passed down. There are no written musical notations. It is the spoken word, the songs that tell history of the people. According to Stephen Ankang, a Tangkul elder, and I quote, "The folk songs of Tangkuls are basically an emulation of nature. The harmony produced by the sound of birds, insects, were the foundation of their songs." Guru's music imitates nature. The sound of the insect, cicada, is present in his music. And in an interview with the Hindu newspaper, he discusses one of his own compositions, which he calls the Cicada Song. And it says, and I quote, "Each season sounds different. Have you noticed? In winter, grass is dry. In the spring, the new leaves blow with the wind. In the rains, the water trickles at different speeds. It's all music." The importance of nature and the tradition of sound is inherent in Naga tradition. So this is how a Naga musician explained to me, and I quote, "We learn the stories, the folk tales about our ancestors, lifestyle, government, economy and culture through our music. Only music, folk music, traditional clothes, those are the original documents that we have, since we have no original written script or manuscript." Using the oral tradition of music and the contemporary tunes popular in the region, Rewben Mashangva has created a particular ecology of creation by bringing together Tangpu folk songs and two of his musical heroes. The first of this is Bob Dylan, and I quote of how he explains Bob Dylan to me. So he says, "When I heard his guitar and vocal delivery, I really felt good. Some of the village elders, when they joked, their delivery sounded so much like Dylan's, positivity in his songs. That feeling was present, like when one listens to the stories, the humor and the happiness. That was the feeling. Sometimes Dylan was just talking, sometimes singing. So this really touched my heart, and I wanted to convey this kind of feeling and sing these kinds of songs. I don't know all of the meanings of the songs. Sometimes I will translate one or two lines, or I will imagine that this must be this, and that must be that." Similarly, so he was also influenced a lot by Bob Marley, and reflecting on his song, the Redemption song, like Mashangva says, and I quote, "The lyrics and the sound are very close together and really reflects Naga village life, where we are also singing about oppression and yearning for freedom. Even though we were very rudimentary in our civilization, and although we don't have many facilities, we are living freely. So, Redemption Song reflects our situation. Emancipation is about freedom and from mental slavery." And one of the best examples of this combination of different genres with the folk traditions that he sings is captured in a song called Chankum Pilava. And how many of you have heard the song? Very nice. One. So it really encapsulates what I've been talking about, like nature, the sound of the cicada, okay, the folk tunes, and of course the Western instruments like drums, guitar, and so on, sung in the tune of the Tangpu folk song. So such is his popularity that he has now become a global guru. And there is an open acknowledgement that this folk tradition that Guru Mashangva presents is part of the larger commodification of culture. John and Jean Komarov draws our attention to how the abstraction of capitalism becomes materialized and mediated in social formations, and how culture as a traditional idiom is increasingly packaged as a commodity. Their provocative title, Ethnicity Inc., encapsulates some of the processes I too describe, especially as Guru negotiates the complex terrain of culture in an age of mass publicity, where visuals and images that enter into circulation confound in their capacity to inspire interrupt and exceed existing meanings in their exuberance. Folk culture needs the aptitude of individuals like Guru, but at the same time, it requires mass consumption and participation through the various media that I have been describing. Nowhere is this more evident than in his collaboration with the Raghu Dixit band called Basti Masti, or House of Fun. Okay, so it combines the folk tunes that Mashangva sings. You know, it's primarily the folk chants that he sings in this kind of collaboration mixed with Hindi like music. Okay? So I mean, it's really, really popular. I mean, I think it's racked up in over probably close to 1 million views. You know, so that's the impact of this kind of music. So what is significant is that this tradition of passing down knowledge from one generation to another is possible through mass publicity, and also through the very art itself, that of fusion. For example, the band Salt and Light Traveling Band fuses traditional music with metal and reggae. Like Guru, they too wear the Raiva Kashong, which is the Tangkul body cloth, cut their hair in the style of Guru, and fuse various genres of music. But the band's lyrics are Christian gospel. Their idea is to present the gospel to a secular stage. Another band that was influenced by Rewben Mashangva is Featherheads. The leader of the band, Augustine, started playing with the traditional Naga clothes, again like Guru. What drew him to Guru was not only his music, but his way of becoming himself. He is Guru, but also our Lord, an elder who represented his vision of our love of ancestors. And Guru showed Augustine and the band how to bridge the time of their ancestors and the time of modernity. In sonic terms, what this highlights is the ability to recognize sound and place as sensed through their motion across space and time, remaining true to who they are as a people. Perhaps Guru's way of becoming himself is marked by these capacious temporal and spatial constellations. So again, I was going to show you a clip, but again, trust me, their music is excellent, I think, because they combine again traditional music with modern drums, guitar, and so on. So, despite the successes of Guru's music and those of other artists in the region, there is precarity in the arts. What is folk music without the fused elements? This is a question that always found a familiar answer. Guru reflects on the question of survival as an artist, always innovating and constantly reflecting on new processes. He says, and I quote, "In order to go professional, you have to be creative and to be able to refine the existing art. You should be able to please the listeners and viewers. Our art survives on their appreciation. If people don't buy our product, we are gone." End quote. This notion of sounding relevant is something that many artists speak about. Alobo Naga, another artist, explains how pure folk is not appealing. As artists, and particularly being a successful artist, they have to survive and to think about entertaining the audience. Guru's music, Alobo argues, is largely about presenting it in a new package that marries the best of both worlds. Alobo says, and I quote, "So if it's like pure folk, then it's a very niche market. From an artist's point of of view, I need to do something commercial if I need to be invited again. If I am full on folk, my market is very limited and will be invited only in government events, but not like this one. But if I do fusion, both sides of the market will enjoy and I will gain an audience. Second, this is a smart way of selling your folk music. I think survival and marketing is one way of making artists do that. For us artists, we have to blend a certain element of Western or popular music to be able to sell our trade and craft. So apologies for the long quote, but I think it makes, I'm trying to illustrate this point about how the tension between tradition and modernity has to be bridged by this idea of fusion. So Olomu's point is that Naga folk music cannot compete with the dominant music based in Hindi and English languages. State support is helpful for some artists, but this kind of association with the government provides very little patronage in the music industry that is now booming the world over. Even simply singing in Hindi, for example, is beneficial in a market driven by familiarity, helping attract wealthy patrons who might invite them to play at private ceremonies or like weddings or commercial events. So English may be a useful language to speak, but at least in like North India, without Hindi in the artist's repertoire, prospects are limited. Augustine from the Featherheads laments the way folk music is understood amongst the younger generation. Boring and without energy, he says. He admits that listening to folk music requires patience, realizing that the only way for the younger generation to appreciate folk is to move towards popular genres, hoping that someday the younger generation will come back to folk. When probed why folk should be in a lower rung to popular music, Freddie from the Salt and Light Traveling Band reminded me whether my line of questioning would be more helpful if it was the other way around. Instead, one should lay the emphasis on folk. And he says, and I quote, "People will appreciate folk if I am able to fuse it with jazz, rock, blues, and reggae." End quote. There is bound to be some dilution when it comes to fusing and making music for the market, Freddie confesses. But Naga folk provides the originality in a market that is teeming with competition, talent, and skill. If you take away the Naga folk elements, at least in the Northeast, all it is doing is simply copying the dominant music genre. Think about fusion as a new genre that artists in the region are creating. Don't think in terms of purity, originality, or even timeless classics. This helpful intervention by Freddie allows me to think about the hierarchy of musical genres that I have been discussing so far. Is Western music above folk? Or is that the wrong way to look at this? Guru's music responds to these issues in nuanced and complex ways. While he is known widely as the king of Naga folk blues and for creating a new genre of experimental indigenous rock, he wants to be known for How music. How is not only the indigenous name of the Kampurs, daily grind of work, here voiced as hey ho. And this presentation is about fusion and the sonic like Guru. So I have shown that fusion is embedded very much in the ecologies of creation. By this, I mean the ability to bring together various influences, but also to show that fusion is not simply a combination of different genres, but it has the ability to transform and establish its own idiom, as the conference learned also articulates. Using Guru Mashangva as an example of this idea of fusion, I have shown that the ability of his music to shine light on our experience of cultural loss is very much grounded in finding the roots and to forge new roots. Tim Ingol's work amongst the Sami people of Finland finds fertile ground in exploring Guru Mashangva's music. Ingol says, to know things, you have to grow into them and let them grow in you so that they become a part of who you are. For Ingol, this approach is not so much learning about the world, but to be taught by it. Therefore, it is vital in the ecologies of creation that fusion, placemaking, and celebrating roots is an open inquiry that leads to growth. And therefore, fusion is about the collective habitation, representation, and performance of culture. It is about shining a light on a path for others to follow. And in this, the sonic guru is an example par excellence. Thank you for your time.
If anybody has any questions?
So when we a wonderful lecture,
So I'd like to come.
I speak loud. Yeah. It was a wonderful lecture, and I know both family and other trying to be sort of coming to limelight and resurfacing. And this is something new to me, and I really enjoyed the lecture. I have only one doubt from a theoretical framework. When you fuse, what is the foundational guideline? Because when you take two or three to fuse to make another new one, who will validate what the dominant one will be the output or the suppressed one? There's always the problem of the binary being taking the first position and the second position. Do you think anyone thought about it, or is there any framework regarding that?
Yes, I think that's a good question. I think so. When you fuse, and what is the dominant cultural platform of this? For people like Guru Mashangva, I think the dominant cultural blueprint is the folk music. So it's the traditional Thangpu, Naga folk music that is the base of it. And of course, I could have explained a bit more, but I didn't have time. But a lot of the instruments as well. So he uses a flute in which he has made. He uses a kind of harp as well, and he uses a fiddle. So all of these instruments are quite important for a person like Mashangva. So the fused element, the dominant kind of element, is always folk music for him. For other artists, I think, who are also copying Guru Mashangva, I think there's a strong understanding that folk is again the dominant platform, because that is the thing that makes their music unique. Because if it's taken over by, say, jazz or blues, why don't you just play jazz and blues, right? So the point is to remain unique. They have to emphasize the dominant folk culture. So I think in that sense, the kind of argument that I've been pursuing is that folk is the template, and I think once you take that folk element and try and blend it with something else, then it creates another movement, and so on. But I think to always stay connected, I think the ecologies of creation is primarily to stay grounded and kind of rooted in place.
Thank you. My final observation on this would be the ecology of creation is very good from the point of view of folk tales, but the economy of commercialization always play a bad role into this creativity.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right. And of course, I well, I'm not ignoring that. I think commodification culture is part and parcel of this, right? And of course, we see this in the Hornbill Festival, and we see this in a lot of events where there is a two-way process, I think, right? There is an aspect of the commodification of culture, but at the same time, I think there is a celebration. So I think we have to try and look at the two forces.
Thank you.